Chris here, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to this week's reading vlog. And it's time for the Final Book Support Group. So it is that time again, and I will be focusing on a lot of sequels. I wish I could say exclusively sequels and series books this month, but alas, I'm a bit behind in that, and I have, let me see, just off the top of my head, I believe Fireborn is on there, and that is a start of a series. I have Orphan 11, which is a standalone. The Women, which is a standalone. The Blackthorn Key, which is a series. Well, the series starter. I have The Ballad of Laurel Springs, which is a standalone. I have A House Between Earth and the Moon, which is a standalone. And I have Stolen Time, which is the start of a series. So I kind of need to work on those as well, and they're not really part of series. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing, but I can say with certainty that I will be reading these. This is my official TBR for the Final Book Support Group this round. I have Unfamiliar Volume 2 for graphic novel, manga, or novella. I have the Venom spreads for, I believe, Continuation Station. I have Almost There for Pulpic. I have Maya and the Lord of Shadows for Final Book. I have Brian's Winter for TBR Vet, and I have The Last Book Wanderer for anticipated sequel. So definitely will be getting to these. These will be a priority. I do have other sequels that I could read that are currently on my TBR. They're just not on my Phase 10 TBR because I have, like, A Vanishing of Griffins. I have The Untold Stories. I have the sequel to the Venom spreads. I have, what's it called? The Forsooth, which is the last book in the Magic Misfits series. I have The Nameless Witch. I think that's what it's called. But that's another book in a series. I have the next book in the Cat and Gamer series. Like, I have series books all over my room that were on my TBR, and I had planned to read a bunch of them this week. And then somehow I just neglected all of that. All of my standalones. So we're going to see how this week goes, but I'm going to try to focus on my Phase 10. Well, yes, my Phase 10, but my Final Book Support Group TBR first. I can tell you that I am partway through Maya and the Rising Dark. I did start that before bed because it's like around 1 in the afternoon on Monday. I'm 124 pages in, and I'm very much enjoying this. It feels very intense, and I'm very excited to see how Maya manages to stop the Lord of Shadows, because I'm assuming that's what's going to happen. And yeah, that's kind of my week. I'm in the midst of a few rollovers from last week, 2 of which are standalones. Well, no, actually, Nowhere Boy is a standalone. What the River Knows might be the start of a series, but Grey Sister is a continuation station, so that's not as bad, and I'm hoping to read a lot of books this week. I think that's my main goal, is to get a bit of reading mojo back, because I feel like I've been not necessarily slumpy, but distracted. I've been really into doing puzzles, and unfortunately the lighting in my room is not good enough to do puzzles in here, which means I'm doing them in the living room, and I can't read like an audiobook in the living room because of other noises. So we'll see how it goes, but that's going to be my first check-in. And you're actually going to be seeing in just a second the puzzle I worked on this morning, which I have now finished, and you can get an idea of what I've been doing in my spare time when I'm not reading. So I will see you again soon when I've finished some of these, and enjoy the B-roll and some little helpers that may be helping me work on my puzzles. Friday the 22nd, and I'm overdue for a check-in. I've read a bunch of stuff this week, so I'm just going to dive in to everything I read because I have a pretty big stack here, and there's some ebooks in there as well. So, first up, I read Unfamiliar Volume 2. I was reading this for the graphic novel, manga, or like novella prompt, and I gave this 4.5 stars. This is the second book in the series, and it follows a Ketun witch named Planchet. And in the first book, she moves to a new town and meets some friends, and we see the continuing adventures of that group. And I just really, really like this series. I enjoy getting to see these characters and the adventures they go on. I think that the art style is really neat. And it's a fun, quick, easy read. And I've really, really enjoyed them. And I'm very intrigued as to where we're going to be going in book 3. So I'm glad to say that I managed to catch up on this, because the other fun thing about this readathon is, well, not readathon, but the other fun thing about the Final Book Support Group is that catching up on your series and making progress on your series is also important. Even though you're not necessarily finishing them, it is about making progress in your series, however that may be. So I'm now caught up on this one. Then I read Brian's Winter, and I read this for TBR Vet. And the reason it's a TBR Vet is because I read Hatchet when I was in 7th grade, 6th or 7th grade, somewhere around then. And it's taken me ages to get to the third book in the series. And this is following Brian, who in the first book is headed to go visit his dad. His parents are recently divorced, and the little plane that he's on ends up crashing because I believe, it's been a while since I've read Hatchet, but I believe the pilot has a heart attack, and it ends up crash landing in a lake, and he has to kind of survive on his own in the wilderness. And I never got to book 3, but book 3 is essentially a what if. So this is a what if Brian had to stay out in the wilderness through the winter. And I'm going to tell you, I'm shocked beyond belief to say this, but I gave it 5 stars. This was never, ever in a million years a book that I would have gone, oh yeah, totally going to give that 5 stars. You would not have seen this on a 5-star prediction list. It never would have occurred to me to suggest that I might give this book 5 stars, but I did. So it was incredible. It had all of the same atmosphere of the first book. And Gary Paulson is incredible at making you feel like you're right there with Brian, experiencing the things Brian is experiencing. And there is a scene in this that I ended up reading to my parents, and they were both like, ugh. And it is definitely a ugh kind of a scene. And it is the type of thing that you wouldn't expect me to enjoy if you know my personality. But it felt so perfect for this book, and the way, like, again, I said, he describes things, made it so real. And I just was absolutely fascinated with the way this book played out and the adventure Brian went on. Well, not the adventure, but like the way Brian went about surviving this winter and the things he had to deal with. So absolutely love this, and I'm very, very excited to read the next one, because I'm curious to see whether it follows this kind of what if narrative, or whether it goes back to this never actually happened and we see what is actually happening to Brian. So very, very much loved this one. Then I finished Maya and the Rising Dark by reading Maya and the Lord of Shadows. I had to think there for a second. I was like, wait, that's not, no, yes. To get the series title, because the first book is the series title, and then this is a different book. So this was obviously my final book. This follows Maya, who in the first book, her dad ends up going missing, and she ends up having to go after him and travels into the dark and has to deal with the Lord of Shadows. And in this one, we're obviously wrapping up the adventure. I gave this book 4 stars. I think book 2 was my favorite. This book had a lot of things I really did enjoy, but I wasn't as invested in it as I was book 2. And I was surprised by that, considering how excited I was for this book after book 2. It just, I don't know, it didn't hook me the way book 2 did. I was really invested in what Maya was going through in book 2 in a way I wasn't with this. And that's not to say it was bad. I did think this was a satisfying ending. I liked seeing how the story wrapped up. I liked the final battle between Maya and the Lord of Shadows and seeing how that kind of all reached its conclusion.
I really enjoyed the series and think it's a really, really good series. So if it's one you've had your eye on, I suggest you check it out because it is a very, very solid series, and I definitely want to read more from this author in the future because I really enjoyed my time with this one. Then I took a break from my series and read Nowhere Boy. I think I was partway through this when this vlog started. So this is a book about a Syrian refugee, I believe. I think he's from Syria. Yes. And he ends up fleeing to Brussels, but gets separated from his father, and it looks like his father's likely dead. His mother died a long time ago, and he's trying to navigate Brussels without like the proper paperwork and all of that. And of course, they're very anti-immigrant and stuff like that in Brussels at this particular period in time. And we also see things from a boy named Max's point of view, who is American, who is in Brussels because his dad took a job in Brussels for a year and is going to school there and ends up meeting Ahmed. And they form a friendship and have to try to navigate the fact that nobody can know that Ahmed is there and is the Syrian refugee who should be careful about who he tells because they're going to hold it against him and all of that kind of stuff. So this felt very on point, given everything happening in the United States right now and the way things are being talked about immigration. So it felt very relevant, even though I believe this came out in 2018. Yes, 2018. So I thought that was interesting, was how relevant it felt to the current day situation, even though this is happening in Brussels and not the United States. I really enjoyed the bond between Max and Ahmed and how their friendship developed in this one. I gave it 4.5 stars because there were times when I felt it was a little bit slow. Not badly slow, just like it didn't keep me as invested as her other book, which is The Lost Year, which I read earlier this year with my first 5-star of 2024. But I still really, really love this, and I will definitely be reading more from this author in the future because I've adored both books, and I think they're both really, really, really good reads. And this one, like I said, definitely had some connection to things going on today, which I don't think she intended when she wrote it in 2018. So that was quite interesting. Also, this was a middle grade March book because I had to read a book about a refugee or immigrant. So managed to work on that TBR. And actually, several of the books I've already mentioned were on my Greek Godathon TBR. So you can see all of the crossover and things I was doing to try to manage multiple readathons. This cat is digging holes in my leg because she was kneading my leg. So I have all of these little scratches on my leg. Isn't she great, guys? Then this is another book I carried over from last week. I think, yeah, just last week. I'm good with books from other months right now. And that's Grey Sister, which is the second book in the Book of the Ancestor series. So while this wasn't on my final book support group TBR, it is a continuation of a series. And this basically follows assassin nuns. So in the first book, we meet Nona, and she ends up going to this like nun school where they teach the kids there to kind of be assassins and learn about different kinds of skills that they could possibly have because of their heritage. I read the first book ages ago, and I really like this book because it has, in the very beginning, it says, for those of you who have had to wait for a while for this book, I provide a brief catch-up notes to book 1 so that your memories may be refreshed and I can avoid the awkwardness of having to have characters tell each other things they already know for your benefit. So I like that there was a small refresher in the beginning of the book. I still wish I had read it closer to book 1, but I did like that the author was giving us something so we weren't going in completely blind, because that can be very, very hard when you're reading fantasy and you read as much fantasy as I do, is trying to remember who everybody is and what was going on and what was important to the plot. I ended up giving this one 4.25 stars. It took me a little bit to get back into, but I think that was more because I didn't read it when I read book 1 and there was a gap there, as opposed to any fault of the book. This story is fascinating. This went in a way that I did not anticipate. It was not at all the plot that I thought we were going to get from the second book, and it leaves in such an interesting place that I am very excited to read book 3, though it does not look like my library has a copy. So I'd requested it because it looked like my library or my library system did, and now it just, you can't even click on it. So I don't know what's going on there with that. But I should be able to get the ebook, hopefully, from a library. And here she comes. I was not paying her enough attention. I should be able to get the ebook copy, and I definitely have the audiobook. So there's no reason I shouldn't be able to finish this next month, because that's the plan. So very invested in this series again, and would like to read book 3 before I lose all of the details of book 2. Then I kind of went against the grain of this readathon and read Fireborn, which is the start of a series, which isn't really the point of this, but this was a book I needed to get to. It's on several of my other TBRs, so it was kind of important. And I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. I really, really enjoyed this one. So this follows 12. And 12 is at this school where they kind of give up their name and their clans and their backgrounds, because they're all different numbers, until they pass certain tests to become like a higher level and get to choose their names. But they kind of give up their names that they were born with. And the school is attacked, and 7 gets taken, and so 12 decides that she's going to go after 7, and ends up having to do so with this, you can see him on the cover right here. He is a statue dog kind of thing. Yeah, an ancient stone guardian. And 2 of the other numbers, I think they're 5 and 6, that are not exactly friends of hers, and they end up going to try to track down 7 and try to figure out how the school was even attacked, what is going on, and who would have wanted to take 7 and why. And I really, really enjoyed this one. I was sucked in from pretty much the word go. There was a spot in the middle where it lagged a little bit, hence why it's getting 4.5 and not 5. But I thought this was a really, really solid start to the series, and here she goes again. And it is definitely very, very intriguing. I'm curious to see where the next book goes. I had heard really good things about this, and this book definitely did not disappoint. I thought 12 was a very, very intriguing character, and I liked learning about her past and how she ended up being 12. And I'm curious to see whether the next book is from 12's point of view, if we get things from other characters' POVs, and to learn more about 7, 6, and 5, and the other people that 12 has surrounded herself with, because there was a lot of very intriguing things going on in this story. And I would like to learn more about Dog, because he's pretty cool, and I'm curious to see how he factors into the greater adventure going forward. So yeah, it left in a really, really interesting spot, and I want to read book 2 hopefully sooner rather than later. I don't even know if book 2's out yet. I hope so, because I really, really enjoyed that one. Then I read Verse Volume 1 and Volume 2. So these are graphic novels. So I had read the first one, I believe, in May of 2022. And I had pulled the second one out of my TBR Jar of Doom. And, well, I pulled the series out, so I had to read book 2. But I knew I needed to reread book 1, because I had no recollection, really. And basically, let's see if I can do this. Because it's so hard when I don't have the book in front of me. I believe we follow Fife. And Fife is kind of like a blacksmith. He makes like nails and weapons and stuff like that. And he has been training under his dad, but decides that to get better, he needs to go to a bigger town nearby, and gets his dad's blessing. And when he sets off on his journey, some crazy things happens, and he ends up having this like medallion, I think it is, split apart in a blinding flash of light. And I'm going to have to look up her name. Somebody ends up coming out of it, and she looks like the Fel, and the Fel are not great, because there was magic in their world, and it, I believe, disappeared. And Cielo, you are not helping right now. This is not helpful when I'm trying to look something up and make sure that the camera doesn't get knocked, because she is something else. There we go. Let's see, what is her name? So yeah, there was magic, but it doesn't exist anymore. And there's the verse, which is where the name comes from, and that's kind of sort of like magic, but not really. And I think somebody tried to bring the magic back, and that's where the Fel came from. And they look like humans, but they're not actually humans. They usually have some sort of sign, like maybe horns. And like I said, there's this blinding flash of light, and out of this medallion comes Naitya, Neitya, Neitya. It's not like I had an audiobook for this. And I struggle to pronounce basic English words, so Neitya. And she kind of looks like possibly a Vel because she has horns, which could be a distinguishing feature. So he's not quite sure what to make of her, but she's in control. She is able to communicate, and that doesn't really describe a Vel. So he ends up heading towards the city, hoping that they can maybe find somebody to explain where she came from. And they end up getting attacked by a bunch of Vel, and they realize that Neitya has magic, which she shouldn't have because magic is gone. And that is where the story goes. So we're following Fife and Neitya as they try to figure out how she came to be in front of Fife and where she got her magic from. And she also has amnesia, so she doesn't really know who she is. The only thing she remembers is her name. And obviously Volume 2 follows that. I gave both of them 4.25 stars. I really like the series, although I will say I wish I had the physical books. I actually own the first book as an ebook from Barnes & Noble. And my library does not have book 2, so I read that via the library because the online app has, like Libby has the ebook version, and that is miserable because so when I was reading it via Barnes & Noble, the copy I own. So this whole screen would be one panel, so like one page. Whereas when you're reading it from the library app, you get it like this and you have both pages. And I can't read that. So you have to blow it up, and then I'm going like this to go up so I can see the bottom of that page. But then I have to bring it back down like this so I can see the top of that page. It was the most miserable reading experience. So I'm torn because if my library doesn't have a physical copy of book 3, and I don't see that they would, given that they don't have it for book 2, because it comes out this year, then I may end up reading the ebook copy of book 3 because I don't know that I like the series enough to want to buy it. I got that first book free because Barnes & Noble has this thing where they give you 5 ebook options if you're a member, and you get to pick one for free every month. And that was the one I picked. So the only reason I own book 1 as an ebook is because I got it for free. And so I don't quite know what to do with that. We'll see. I'm probably just going to end up reading it as an ebook because I feel like it, again, is not necessarily a series I think I'm going to reread like 3-4 years from now. So I don't see the point in spending money just to get book 3 when I have no intentions of getting book 1 and 2. So that'll be fun whenever I get to that. But I do want to read book 3 because I'm very curious to see where the story goes, because there was some intriguing things going on in book 2, which I can't talk about because that would be spoilers for book 1. Man, series books are always so hard to talk about without wanting to give anything away. And then the last book I finished is Almost There. And this is my poll pick. So I'm making very good progress in my Final Book Support Group TBR. So this is A Twisted Tale. And this follows Tiana, and it says, what if Tiana made a deal that changed everything? So if you don't know, Tiana is the princess from The Princess and the Frog. And I've never seen that movie. So I went into this not knowing the story at all, and I gave this 4 stars, and I think this is one where not knowing the story did not help. So the 2 others off the top of my head in this series that I've read where I don't believe I've watched the source movie, or I haven't in a really, 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 really long time, would be last month I read Hercules' retelling, which follows Meg. And I was able to follow that and get really into that one despite not having really any recollection of the Hercules movie, assuming I've even ever watched it, because it is so heavily involved in Greek mythology, and I know a lot of Greek mythology, so that one didn't feel completely foreign. And then the other one was Mulan, and I knew enough about the plot of Mulan to kind of follow along, whereas I legitimately, this isn't a movie I hear a lot about or a story I hear a lot about, so I really went into this not understanding the backstory, because from what I can tell, this takes place after all of the events that happen in The Princess and the Frog. I could be wrong, but it feels like it takes place at the very end or after the events of The Princess and the Frog, or towards the end of the events of The Princess and the Frog. But again, I could be wrong because I've never read it or watched the movie or anything like that. So I think that brought down my enjoyment, because going into these without knowing the characters, I feel like you miss out on stuff because you don't understand the relationship between the characters. You don't know anything about them. And this almost feels like fan fiction. And I love fan fiction. Like, I will sink my teeth into a good fanfic when I'm in the mood to read a story in a universe that is familiar to me. And there are some fantastic fanfic writers out there that have taken some of my favorite stories and just made incredible stories that either completely redo things or continue the story or whatever. And I just feel like this is the same kind of thing where, like, what is cool about fanfic is that you're usually entering a universe you already know things about, so it's all familiar. Like, when I was in school and college, I wasn't reading physical books, but I read fanfic all the time because it was really, really easy, because I didn't need to learn a new magic system or new characters or new relationships. Like, I was diving into a world that was already familiar to me, where I knew all of the rules of whatever world that was. And I read all different kinds of fanfic, so it wasn't always necessarily fantasy. So I knew the rules. Like, sometimes it would be TV show fanfic because I wanted a world that was familiar to me. And when I was in the mood to read, it was just easier to read something where I didn't have to invest any brain power in getting attached to characters or learning about relationships or rules or magic or anything like that. And this feels like the same idea of, if you have seen The Princess and the Frog, you will probably be more attached to the characters in the story. And I think I was missing out on that. This feels like the type of book that, if I were to reread it after having watched the movie, I would probably have a completely different opinion on the book. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know, because I've never seen the movie, so I don't know whether I would enjoy the way this changes things. So my opinion is not necessarily the best on this book, because it is completely subjective to the fact that I don't actually know who many of these characters are. But I did get into the story. I was curious to see how Tiana's life kind of played out, because she made some interesting decisions that made things quite interesting for her. So I did enjoy it, but like I said, I didn't have the attachment to the characters that I think would give me an idea of whether it was a really, really good retelling or a mediocre one. So again, grain of salt on my opinion on this one. I can only say that I enjoyed my time with it for the most part. And then the last update I have is that I am partway through The Last Book Wanderer. So this is my book that I'm reading for Anticipated. And I am on page 122, so I'm making decent progress. I actually started this, was really enjoying it, and then put it down because I was doing stuff that required audiobooks, and I don't have an audiobook for this. So this is the sixth and final book in the Pages & Co series, and we're following Tilly, who is able to book wander, which means she can go into books and have characters come out of books. And I've really, really, really enjoyed this series. And I am so intrigued by where this is going to end up. And I'm so sad that I haven't been able to pick it back up, because I was really enjoying my time with it. So that is definitely a high priority for the last 2 days of this readathon. The other book I believe I have that I haven't gotten to is Continuation Station. And for that, I had picked out the Venom spreads. I mean, I've read some continuations, so it's not as big a deal. But this is my book for Continuation Station. So I should be able to get to this. I'm not worried about it. And then I'm hoping to hop right from that into Blood on the Plains, I believe it's called, which is the third book in that series. So we'll see what else I can get to. I mean, I read, let's see, Unfamiliar, Brian's Winter, Maya and the Rising Dark, and I want to say The Nowhere Boy, all in the first day of the readathon. And then I think I finished a couple more on day 2, and then I slowed down on Wednesday and Thursday. So I'm having an incredibly efficient week. So if I can pick up some of that mojo this weekend, which Saturday, so tomorrow, I think between tonight and tomorrow, we're currently forecast to get like 8 to 12 inches of snow or some stupid thing. So I won't be going anywhere or doing anything on Saturday. It's going to be kind of a stay inside kind of sort of day. So we'll see. I also wanted to mention that I partook in Jade's sprints, her Patreon sprints. So I've taken part in sprints even though they weren't staffs. And I've done self-care because, as you will have seen in the B-roll, I have been working on puzzles, which for me is a way of self-care to kind of do something that requires a lot less brain power or brain power in a different way. I've really, really enjoyed them, and I find them quite relaxing, and I don't get to do them very often. So she just almost fell off of my leg and decided to grab onto it with her claws. Okay, yeah, I'm done with this clip. So I'm doing really, really good. I've got all of my bingo board and I fling my string around, except for anticipated sequel and continuation station. I should be able to finish those easily, and we'll see what else I can get to. But yeah, I'm gonna hop off here now because I need to do something with her and make sure that she didn't just rip my leg open. And I will check back in with you at the end of this week to wrap this vlog up. So it is Monday, which means it is time to wrap this vlog up and share with you how I managed to finish my week. So, for my final book support group TBR, I had Unfamiliar Volume 2 for graphic novel, manga, or comic. For a TBR event, I did Brian's Winter. For final book, I did Maya and the Lord of Shadows. For pull pick, I did Almost There. And I had those in the last clip. I had also done self-care by working on puzzles. I had shared my TBR, and I actually did this weekend some sprints on my channel. I had also participated in Gavin and Jade's sprints. So while I didn't get to any of Steph's, I did partake in some sort of sprints over the week. So I definitely think I caught that one, which left me with Continuation Station and Anticipated Sequels. So first up, I finished my anticipated sequel. I read The Last Book Wanderer. This is the sixth and final book in the Pages & Co series, and I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. So in this series, we start following Tilly, who learns she's a book wanderer and she has the ability to go in and out of books. And throughout the series, we meet a bunch of different characters. And in this one, we get multiple POVs. So we get CLO. Yeah, we get CLO. We get Tilly and another character's POV who we meet along the way. And it is interesting. Just knock things. You're so helpful. So helpful. We get to see multiple POVs in this one. So both of the POVs we've had in previous books. I thought that was really interesting as it allowed us to really get a sense of what was going on as things were happening in 2 completely different sections of the story. I love how this wrapped up. It made me tear up at the end. It felt like a very satisfying conclusion to the story. And I just really, really loved just everything about how the story finally ended. And I'm very, very sad that it's over because I loved this series so incredibly much. And I cannot wait to do a reread in the future so I can enjoy it once again. This is a favorite series of mine, and I really love the ending. And then for Continuation Station, I ended up reading The Venom Spreads. This is the second book in the Curse of the Sandtongue series, and I gave this 4 stars. This follows a gorilla named Bramble, a leopard named Chase, and a gazelle named Prance, and there is something in the Bravelands that is starting to affect other animals, and they have to kind of come to, well, not together necessarily, but they're all kind of working towards the same goal in different parts of the Bravelands to try to figure out what is going on and why animals are being affected in the bigger story. And obviously this continues their journey into figuring out what is going on. I liked this one. I do not like arc 2 as much as I like the first arc, although I do really, really like Bramble, Chase, and Prance. I think they're very good POVs. So we have the multiple POVs. And like I said, we see what's going on in different parts of the Bravelands. And this was intriguing. It definitely started to stitch together some of the stuff that was going on from book 1 and start to kind of sort through a bit of that. And it left it in a really, really good spot for Blood on the Plains, which I also read, which is the third and final book in this arc. So I finished another series. This one I gave 4.25 stars, and I really enjoyed the flow of this one. It felt quite fast-paced. I think my issue is that it almost felt too fast-paced. Like, because there was only 3 books in this arc, it felt like the events happened really quickly. And I don't know if I enjoyed that as much. I think maybe that's why this arc got a lower rating than the previous arc, because every other arc that I know of in the Aaron Hunter series has been 6 books. So this felt almost rushed in a lot of ways because like everything happened quickly and we didn't have time to start to put pieces together or let things breathe. I saw some of the end coming. I kind of figured out where we were going. And it definitely left in an intriguing spot because I know there is another arc. So I'm very curious to see what happens in that arc. But I did enjoy this more than I enjoyed, I think, books 1 or 2. So It wasn't my favorite arc ever written by Aaron Hunter, but I did enjoy it for the most part and thought that it was a fun read. And that concludes my final book support group TBR. So I managed to nail everything, but that's not all I managed to squeeze in at the end of this week. I'm going to mention I have 2 DNFs. The first I'm going to mention is A House Between Earth and the Moon. I got, I think, to page 46. Yes. So this has 3 POVs. It follows Alex, who is working on this like super algae and ends up going to this like space station or space, a luxury residential space station called Parallaxis. And he and these other scientists, there are 6 of them, are up there to work in the lab and kind of become the guinea pigs for living there. The second POV is his daughter. And she's, I believe, in like high school, maybe middle school, high school, somewhere in there. And then our last POV, yeah, she's a teenager, is of a psychologist named Tess. And one of the things you need to know is that there are census phones that are implanted in everyone's ears that archive each humiliation, and that's part of Mary's issue. I think her name's Mary, yes? Yes. His daughter, is that you have these phones implanted in your ears and they see everything, and the thing that Tess is doing is starting to watch footage of everything that has happened to the scientists that are going to be on the like space station. And when we get to her POV, she's literally talking about the woman whose footage she's watching, like using the bathroom and hearing like her pull her pants down and hearing her pee. And it made me very, very uncomfortable. And it says that she's going to get a bit obsessed with these people. And I went, no, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. So I just decided to DNF it because, like I said, it was making me very uncomfortable. And I felt like it was not going to get away from that. Although I liked the tone of Alex's. It was once we started getting into what these like devices were and what they were seeing and what they were capturing and now how it was going to be used that I started to get uncomfortable. So DNFing this and unhauling it. Then my other DNF is The Ballad of Laurel Springs. I got to page, 97. And I read the first couple of sections. And this starts with 10-year-old Grace, who ends up writing this report for school and finds out that her 4 times great-grandfather once stabbed his lover to death. And then we start seeing older generations. So we start with her like 4 or 5 time removed great-grandma, Polly, I think is her name. No, Polly is not her name. Pearl. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. And I did not like her. There were some things in her chapter. And now granted, she was born, well, I don't know when she was born, but this chapter takes place between 1907 and 1908. So it's not surprising that it's in there, but there is a moment between 2 women and she immediately treats them like they're dirt because the 2 women kissed, and that is foul and abhorrent and they're evil. And that made me very much dislike this character. And then we go to her daughter-in-law's POV, and there were things in Miriam's POV that I just did not like. And then the third relative of Grace's that we hear about is Miriam's quote-unquote stepdaughter, because at that point Miriam doesn't know this kid exists. And let's see, where is Miriam's stepdaughter? Like what year? So Miriam's stepdaughter is 1937, and Miriam's stepdaughter is black. And back then, that was not going to be a good thing, given that Miriam's husband is white. So I got the feeling that it was going to go in directions that I didn't enjoy. And then I was reading some reviews, and a lot of people said it felt very disjointed, like a bunch of short stories, that there were people who were talking about how they very much didn't like any of the women and the choices that they were making. And I just went, I'm bored. I'm not liking this. It doesn't feel like a book I'm going to enjoy. So I decided to DNF it. So I'm going to take my bookmark out now, because this just did not feel like a book for me. Then another book I finished and did enjoy is A Vanishing of Griffins. This is the second book in the Song of Songs of Magic series, and I gave this 4.5 stars. So this in the first book follows, oh, what's his name? Patch, who is a piper, and in the first book has to deal with, is it the Piper of Hamelin? An evil piper stole the children of Hamelin, so he was known as the Hamelin Piper and got locked away. And Patch in the first book realizes that the Hamelin Piper has escaped and has to try to protect people from him when nobody knows he's gotten out, I believe. So we're now following his adventures on continuing that journey of dealing with the Hamelin Piper. He's doing so along with his friend Ren, who is a girl who is cursed to be a rat, and Barver, who is a Draco Griff. So he is part dragon and part griffin. And they met in the first book, and he continues on his journey with his friends. And I really, really enjoyed this one. I love the series. It is such an intriguing story. I love the relationships in this series. I like that there is a bit of magic in this series that they have demonstrated it can be used for good and for evil. I liked the new characters we met, and I hope that we see some of them in book 3 whenever I manage to get my hands on that, because I'm hoping I can do it sooner rather than later, though if I'm waiting to actually buy it, it's going to be a while, because this is the paperback, and it came out on March 5th, I believe. So if I want to get the paperback of book 3 in the States, I'm going to be waiting a while. But I really, really enjoy this series. Like I said, I like Patch. I like the relationships he's developed and the characters that he's met along the way, because you have that really strong friendship group, and I love a really good, strong friendship group that kind of develops naturally. And I think the magic is intriguing, and I'm curious to see how the series manages to wrap up, because like I said, I'm pretty sure it's a trilogy, so we'll see when I get to book 3. And then the last book I finished is the Blackthorn Key. So this was a reread, and this follows Christopher, who is a blacksmith apprentice, to Master Benedict Blackthorn. And one day his master sends him on an errand, and when he comes back, his master is dead. And he quickly realizes there's a lot more going on, and that it's not so simple. There's a mysterious cult that is involved, and he kind of has to stay one step ahead of them while trying to figure out what exactly it was that his master knew that got him killed. This also has a really strong friendship in it with him and his best friend, Tom. And I love their friendship. I had forgotten this is a reread. And I had forgotten how much I love the friendship between Christopher and Tom. This is a historical fiction. There's a little bit of, like, maybe some fantastical elements to it with, like, alchemy. He's not a blacksmith. Why did I say blacksmith? He's an apprentice to an apothecary. Because it says he is creating powerful medicines, potions, and weapons as an apprentice to Master Benedict Blackthorn. That would not be a blacksmith. It's like an apothecary. So, my brain is feeling very, very frazzled right now. I've read a lot and done a lot, and my brain is going in about 16 different directions with all the stuff I need to do. So, yeah, apothecary. Where I got blacksmith from? I'm feeling like I must have read a book recently where the character... Yes, Verse. It was Verse. I read Verse, and that character was a blacksmith and was working to make, like, nails and guns and weapons and... Well, not guns, because I don't think there were guns there. Like, swords and weapons and stuff. That's where I'm getting... I'm confusing 2 books that I've read. My brain is working real great. So, anyways, he's apprenticed to Master Blackthorn. When his master dies, he has to kind of piece together the clues as to what's going on. And I really enjoyed my reread of this. I gave it 4.25 stars, which is more than I gave it originally, because I read this in 2018, and I gave it 3 stars. And I don't know why. Can't tell you. I was not recording videos then. I did not do reviews. I wrote nothing down, so I also don't know whether my 3-star was like almost 4 or whether it was down in the 3. I do know as the books go on, I rated them higher, so I'm very excited to continue the journey, because if past me liked the subsequent books more and current me is already rating this higher, then I'm assuming I'm going to enjoy the subsequent books even more than I did the first time. So I'm very curious to see where Christopher goes next, because I do not remember, though I will say as I was reading this, details did start to refresh in my memory, so I expect that to continue with the second book in the series. That's not all I read, though. I started a Death at the Party, or Death of the Party, or something like that. It is my highest rated, and that was one of the prompts I had to fulfill. We're following a woman who, I'm not going to be able to remember her name right now, but she is now part of the press at in this town she has moved back to. She lived there when she was young, moved away, and then came back. And she had been working in finance, but something happened with her fiance that meant she could no longer get a job in finance, so she ended up getting this job in her former hometown, and she hasn't been there in a very long time. I think she left in like 4th or 5th grade, and she wakes up. The book starts with her waking up to a police scanner mentioning something happening at this house. So she goes to the house. There was a Halloween party there, and a body has turned up. And I think her friend, who they stayed in contact even after she left, but kind of fell right back into being best friends when she came home, was saying some disparaging things about the murder victim in her car while they were waiting to see if our main character could get a statement. And I think she's going to end up being like the main suspect, and our main character is going to have to try to figure out who the actual killer is to clear her friend's name, but I'm not 100% sure. This is the problem with me reading ebooks. I don't have the book to reference back to, but I'm enjoying that so far, I think. There has been a few things that I'm not sure on, but I want to see kind of where the book goes before I make a determination on how I'm really feeling, but we're going to see where things go with that one. And then the other book I started, and I was working on this on sprints last night, was The Women of the Copper County. Let me get my light out of there. And I'm on page 60. So decent progress in this. This is following a group of individuals who live in a mining town. And it's in 1913. And our main kind of protagonist is going to be Annie Clements, who is super tired of men having to risk their lives to take care of everybody and barely making ends meet. And she's basically going to stand up for the entire town, and we're going to see how that goes. So I'm enjoying the start of this one, and we're going to see how things play out. So I was very happy to pick this up because I had just DNF'd those other 2 books, and it was nice to pick up something that I was into. So that is the end of my week. I feel like I got a lot done, which makes me very, very happy. I completed my TBR. I read a lot of sequels. I finished a couple of series with reading Blood on the Plains, The Last Book Wanderer, and Maya and The Lord of Shadows. So no complaints there. But yeah, I think I'm going to wrap this vlog up here because I've been talking for quite a while. All of my social media is linked in the description below if you'd like to come chat with me. If you've made it this far in the video, leave me cheetah, gorilla, or gazelle, or like any animal you'd find on the plains in like Africa in the comment section below. Like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!